Hey, thanks for tuning in again. In the first part of this series, we talked about how a journalist named Stefan kind of stumbled into this whole new world of journalism. This time, we're going to explore how that idea started to get some real structure. So, a quick recap. Stefan was looking at all these progressive movements in journalism. He saw people applying nonviolent communication, others using mediation techniques, and he was talking to folks from solution-focused outlets. He sensed that all these different approaches had, well, something in common. But what was it? And then he found it. The thing that connected all these dots wasn't a technique or a specific topic. It was something much deeper, a shared stage of maturity. Specifically, stage E7 in a psychological model called ego development. I mean, his quest really took him everywhere. He looked at constructive journalism, peace journalism, empathetic journalism, slow journalism, you name it. And all these different paths, they all seemed to be pointing in the same direction. He was finally starting to see the map. So, what is this ego development model? Now, I know ego can sound a little arrogant, but that's not what we're talking about here. This is a scientifically validated framework researched at top universities. It describes how our core sense of self, our I, and our entire worldview evolve in predictable stages as we mature. Okay, before we jump into the stages themselves, there are a couple of really important ground rules. First, no stage is better than another. Every person has equal worth at every stage. But, and this is the key part, with each new stage, our ability to handle complexity goes up. Think of it like upgrading your mental operating system. You can suddenly process more nuanced information and solve bigger, trickier problems. So where does our society stand right now? Well, this study from 2010 gives us a pretty clear picture. Take a look. The vast majority of people in Western societies, that's a whopping 68%, are centered in just two stages, E5 and E6. And that has a huge impact on pretty much everything, especially our media. So let's dig into these dominant or conventional stages, from E4 to E6. This is basically the DNA of the journalism most of us consume every single day. All right, let's start with stage E4, which we can call the community-oriented stage. At E4, your identity is all about the group. It's about belonging, loyalty, and fitting in. The worldview is a pretty straightforward us versus them. So journalism coming from this stage is all about strengthening that us. This could be state media building up national pride, the local paper cheering on the home team, or even tabloid gossip that defines who's in and who's out. The main goal isn't really objectivity, it's cohesion. But, what happens when your group's rules clash with another group's, or just with reality? Well, that tension can actually push a person to the next stage. E5, the rationalist. And this is a big one. It's where the single largest chunk of the adult population sits. At E5, your identity shifts from the group to your own individual mind. It's all about being the expert, being right, and proving your point with facts and logic. This is your classic watchdog journalist. Their mission? To uncover errors, expose what's wrong, and establish the truth through hard investigation. It often leads to a pretty critical, competitive style. Like an investigative report that takes down a powerful figure. And that leads us to stage E6, the self-authoring stage. This is where another big chunk of the population is. So while E5 is great at finding problems, it can get stuck in just being critical. The drive to not just point out what's wrong, but to actually build something and succeed, that's what moves people to E6. The focus here is on achievement and effectiveness. It's the high-performer mindset, and E6 journalism reflects this. It's super professional, well-crafted, and designed to be useful. Think of the deep dives in The Economist or the authoritative reporting in the New York Times. So those are the conventional stages that really shape most of our media landscape. But what happens next? Well, now we enter the post-conventional stages, E7 and E8, and this is where things get really, really interesting. The first post-conventional stage is E7, the relativizing stage. This is a huge shift. It's where you start to look at your own perspective and realize, hey, it's just one of many. You begin to question the very lens you use to see the world. At E7, you really start to question your own assumptions. You see that truth can depend on the context and that your identity isn't some fixed thing. Journalism from this stage becomes way more empathetic. It's not just about showing one side, it's about building a bridge between different views and actively giving a voice to marginalized groups. And this was it.
This was the common ground Stefan was looking for. This is the home of things like peace journalism and nonviolent communication.
From there, we can move to stage E8, the systemic stage. So if E7 is about seeing the system you're in, E8 is about being able to integrate and even transform it.
The E8 mindset is pretty incredible. It can hold contradictions without needing to pick a side. It thinks in meta-systems, like the systems that connect other systems. Journalism from this stage is truly transformative. It doesn't just report on a debate. It tries to find a higher truth that can bring both sides together. It aims to help society grow, blending deep compassion with super sharp analysis. Paradox isn't a problem here. It's just part of life.
The writer Roger Williamson just captured the spirit of E8 so perfectly with this thought. It's about accepting that things are ambiguous, sometimes painfully so. It's this ability to hold complexity, to resist the easy, simple answer that really defines the stage. Okay, so we've taken this pretty wild journey through these different stages of development. It's a fascinating theory for sure, but the big question is, why does any of this actually matter right now in the real world? Let's go back to that number we saw earlier, 68%. That's how many of us are operating from that expert mindset of E5 and the achiever mindset of E6. That's the logic that built our modern world, and it absolutely defines our news media. Which brings us to the most important question of all. The thinking from E5 and E6 has given us incredible progress, no doubt about it. But is that thinking enough for the challenges we face now, for the hyper-complex, global, interconnected crises of our time? The source material we looked at suggests that maybe it isn't. To deal with today's challenges, we might need a journalism that can operate from those later, post-conventional stages. A journalism that doesn't just report on problems, but one that can act as a catalyst for our society's own growth. And that leaves us with one final, crucial question. If this more mature journalism is so important, how do we actually strengthen it? How can we make it happen? Well, that is exactly what we are going to dive into next time. For today, thank you so much for joining me.